Good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. Here we are for another Living Hope Today study, and today we are in 1 Samuel chapter 27. This is a very interesting chapter. You remember that David has just snuck into Saul's camp, taken the spear. Saul was unaware of his presence. David proves to Saul that he's not out to kill him. Saul, nevertheless, even though he kind of blesses David at the end of chapter 26, it's not over. And David is tired. I don't know if you've ever been weary from an ongoing situation that seems to never end, but David is in that position. He just has had enough. He can't, Well, look what he does. Let me just show you. That's the best way. But David thought to himself, all right, now we're going to hear it. We're going to see a little weakness in our soon-to-be king of Israel. David thought to himself, one of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul. Wait a minute, David, what are you doing? Where's the faith? Where's the trust? Where's the assurance that God's plan is going to be fulfilled? What happened to you? Well, he's just tired. He's burned out. And I can understand that from my own experience. Perhaps you can as well. You get to the place where, look, this fight is too much for me. Well, there it is. We don't hear David praying. We don't hear him fasting and going before the Lord for the Lord's direction. We just hear his human heart say, look, I know Saul's powerful. He's much more powerful than me and my 600 guys. He's been chasing me around the countryside for a long time, and how can I possibly escape him? He's going to get me. I know one of these days he's going to kill me. Wow. Well, the best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. So now we see David formulate his own plan to save himself in his own strength. But that's what we often do, right? We look for the path of least resistance to try to get out of the trouble that is in front of us. Instead of standing by faith, seeking God's guidance, we make our own plan. Amazingly, though, as you read chapter 27, you'll see that God continues to work through David, even though David's in that place where he's not really asking God what he should do anymore. He's taking things into his own hands. Here's the reasoning. Then Saul will give up searching for me anywhere in Israel, and I will slip out of his hand. This is a self-preservation move. I'm going to get out of here so that Saul can't find me, and I hope he gives up instead of killing me. So what does he do? David and the 600 men with him left and went over to Achish, son of Maach. Is that how you say that? King of Gath. King of Gath? Okay, so all you biblical scholars are triggered right there, right? Achish? Oh yeah, you remember that guy. Remember back in chapter 21? That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. So David's already been to see this king. All right, but the servants of Achish said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. David took these words to heart. He was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. Really? Remember, he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. So, okay, David has been here before. Apparently, time has passed, and either Achish doesn't remember or doesn't care about the past and about the reputation that David has earned through his victories. Well, David and his men settled in Gath with Achish. So David now goes into the camp that's directly opposed to Israel. It appears, at least to the king of Gath, that David switched sides. We'll see that more clearly at the end of the chapter. Each man had his family with him, and David had his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel, the widow of Nabal. We saw that yesterday. Okay, so David's now in Gath. What's he doing? Well, he's in relative peace when it comes to being chased by Saul. When Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he no longer searched for him. Okay, so I'm sure Saul is using this as ammunition against David. I was right about that guy. Look, he went over to the Philistines. He's over there now. He's betrayed his country. I'm sure there's plenty of political propaganda going on in Saul's camp. But David says to Achish in verse 5, if I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be assigned to me in one of the country towns that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you? Okay, he's asking Achish, king of Gath, for a town, for a place. I got 600 guys. We all have our families with us. We're here. Give us a place to live, would you? Well, Achish complies, right? I want to live in one of your towns. Well, look what happens. So on that day, Achish gave him Ziklag, and it has belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. David lived in Philistine territory a year and 4 months. So we got 16 months of time passing here where David's in the enemy camp, and now we see that him and his little band of 600 guys and their families are all in Ziklag. Now, just to give you a little context for that, David's been hiding out over here for quite a while. I guess I should get out of the way. He's been in the wilderness of Ziph. He's been in Carmel. That's where Abigail's from. He's been over here hiding from Saul. Okay, just to give you some context, up in the right-hand corner there is Jerusalem. It's a little bit farther north than that, but I just wanted you to see where it is. So he's journeyed now to Gath, which is up here, all right? And he's now asked for a town, and Achish has given him Ziklag, all right? So now this is where David and his 600 guys are hanging out, just to give you that little visual. Now David and his men went up. Wow, look at this. David's still busy. He raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. From ancient times, these people had lived in the land extending to Shur and Egypt. And just to give you a little hint on this as well, Geshur and Amalek are down there in the southern section of that map. I don't know, it's probably too small for you to see, but Ziklag is just a little farther to the north of there. David's going down there to attack those people. And what does he do when he gets there? Well, it says this: whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or a woman alive. What does that tell you? No witnesses, nobody to retaliate, and nobody to report what really happened. The victor gets to write history and tell whoever's interested what happened according to his version. David wiped them out. But he took sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels and clothes. And then he would go back to Achish, the king of Gath, right? I just want you to remember these groups that David's attacking. The Amalekites, do you remember them? They're the first nation to attack Israel after the Exodus in Exodus 17. Remember, that's the battle where Moses keeps his hands up in prayer, and as long as he's praying and God is watching over him, Joshua is able to defeat the Amalekites, and as soon as Moses lowers his hands, the Amalekites start winning, and Moses has help holding his hands up for the whole day while Joshua wipes out the Amalekites, or at least defeats them in that battle. But in that section of Exodus 17, God says that Amalek, or the Amalekites, are going to be his generational enemy. Why? Because they attacked his people. Remember, this is the same group Saul was commanded to destroy. But then he didn't completely destroy them. He failed in his mission. So what's happening? Even though David looks like he's out there on his own doing what he thinks is best to ensure his own survival in his own strength, God is still using him as an agent of judgment against the enemies of God's people. Very interesting. The Gershites and the Girzites, well, they're part of the peoples that Israel failed to drive out. You can read a little bit about them in Joshua 13. They're a persistent threat to Judah's southern border. And nonetheless, in this period of history, these 16 months where David is in Philistine territory, David is attacking them ruthlessly, defeating them completely. In fact, verse 11, he did not leave a man or a woman alive to be brought to Gath, for he thought, here's his reasoning, they might inform on us and say this is what David did. So while he's in Philistine territory, he is really serving God in the sense of wiping out God's enemies. And such was his practice as long as he lived in Philistine territory. Very interesting. So despite his burnout and his own solution, God still moves God's plan forward through him as judgment comes against these people groups who have opposed God so vehemently. 27:12, Achish trusted David and said to himself, he has become so odious to his people, in other words, such a stench, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever. So his behavior, David's behavior, has brought him to the place where the king of the Philistines, Achish, has decided to trust him. Now we're going to pick it up there next time in chapter 28, but just think about that. David's burnout does not stop God's plan. In fact, even though he is showing weakness in the sense of not depending on God for his next move, he's making decisions for himself, but God is still willing to say, I'll use your life for my glory. And we'll see that David ascends to the throne in the near future as we continue through the book. But tomorrow we'll see something that's just absolutely horrendous. Once again, Saul comes into focus, but let's not go down that road until we get there. God bless you, church. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.